sisters, I can barely contain my glee on this sweltering Sunday morning in the late-stage Anthropocene. I guess it's axiomatic that if you wait long enough, life will hand you something interesting. A year ago, I posted a challenge to tireless champion of biblical creationism Kent Hovind, aka Dr. Dino without the doctorate, and had heard nothing from that quarter. I'd assumed that he had seen the challenge and was ignoring me, but it appears I was wrong and that it's just recently come to his attention. Very well, better late than never, and at this time of planetary crisis, I'll take all the entertainment I can get. Kent whacked me the other night on his Whack an Atheist show, performed before an adoring live audience at his Dinosaur Adventureland. So I'll be responding in part to that. But my primary aim in this lesson is to advance the line of questioning that I promised Mr. Hovind a year ago. I informed him in my challenge that we weren't going to handle the exchange the way he's used to, but he ignored that part and went right ahead spouting his hallucinatory conjectures and tossing straw men disguised as mostly ill-framed questions right and left, which has been his go-to debate strategy ever since he found a way to make a buck or two by debating atheists. So I need to start today's lesson by informing my viewers and reminding Hovind, who clearly needs the refresher, of the nature of my challenge to him. I'm not challenging him to a debate, nor do I have any interest in participating in one. I'm challenging him to respond to some questions that he won't look at honestly. If he will not accept my challenge as framed, then I have no choice but to consider him a coward. Now, I won't be answering his idiotic questions. He's been throwing those around pretty much all his life, and he's ignored the answers that have been given to him by scores of people who are much better qualified to address them than I am. There would be no point in wasting my time or that of my viewers repeating those same questions for him to ignore again. This is a different game, Kent, and you're either going to play it the way I've set it up or you lose. I'm pretty sure he'll never agree to my terms because he's one of those immature, developmentally arrested little boys who's not about to play by any rules he didn't make up himself. That's why this Baptist preacher ended up in prison. I'll treat you to a few excerpts from his whack porn video, mostly for the amusement that's in it, but also to set the stage for the meat of today's lesson. In case you've never seen his dog and pony show, here's Dr. Kent the Science Gent introducing his Wednesday evening Whack an Atheist show.
Dinosaur Adventureland. How's the mic sound over there? Good, okay. Tonight, July 6, 2022. Was it a little warm today or what at Dinosaur Adventureland? Yeah. You new folks, did you get to go in the lake? No? Oh, that's a blast out there. Tonight will be Whack an Atheist. Dr. Kent, the Science Gent. I wear red just to, well, you know, entice them, you know, Toro, right? Okay. We believe dinosaurs always lived with man. They're part of the normal creation. God made everything in 6 days. And the evolution theory is the dumbest and most dangerous religion in the history of the world. Am I out of focus on there, brother? Something looks wrong. Okay. Come visit our Dinosaur Adventureland in Lenox, Alabama, 1 mile north of downtown Lenox. Whack an Atheist is fun, fast, easy to learn, and addictive. It's a joke, guys. Relax, okay? We don't know. No atheists were harmed in the making of this video. Even small children can learn how to spot how dumb the evolution theory is and whack them back down. So we do this whacking for your own good. Wake up. You've been taught something dumb. It's not true. We're here to straighten you out, okay? Bible says the fool said in his heart, there's no God. The fool said there's no God. If you believe in evolution, you're a fool, okay? So we're doing this for your good, like pushing you out of the way of a speeding car. We're trying to help you, okay? So pay attention, boy. This is for your good.
And now I'm going to let him get a bunch of stuff wrong and watch him throw a few dirt bombs. These will be amusing as well as useful, since the questions he's responding to at length are merely preliminary, and he's misunderstood that completely. My first actual question to him is coming later today in this very video.
Okay, I just noticed yesterday somebody posted a comment. When was this? A year ago. Some guy calls himself the old Codger. Who said, I'm going to challenge Kent Hovind. He will answer my questions. If I don't hear something in 2 weeks, you default. I don't read all the comments. I didn't watch your old Codger. I didn't watch your video. I'm sorry, okay? So then 2 weeks later, he said, oh, Atheist Codger versus Dr. Dino. Will it happen? Well, I cannot figure out how to get the audio to play and play the actual video. It's only 3 minutes long, but you can watch it for yourself. There it is. Atheist Codger versus Dr. Dino. Will it happen? Got 300 views from over a year ago. So I typed out the text of what he said, the part starting at about 50 seconds or something like that. He said, I've got some questions you can't answer, talking about me. And I think you probably know that from having watched what I posted already. No, Codger, I didn't watch what you posted already. That's right. You are not about to risk the humiliation that would inevitably follow any public vivisecting of your weird beliefs by someone who understands them as well as you. Old Codger has a doctor's degree in music. But he's an expert on creation and going to tear me apart here. Okay. I do want to be fair, and I don't want to accuse you of believing something you don't, in fact, believe. That would be your approach. Oh, now that's called an ad hominem, Mr. Codger. But I'm fundamentally more honest than you. Oh, now that's called a lie, okay? So I'll just go ahead right now and ask you the questions that I'll need an answer to before I can post my follow-ups for your prayerful consideration and for the amusements of whatever audience this exchange draws. Now, old Codger, I'm not demanding that anyone pay for my religion to be taught in public schools, so you're attempting to shift the burden of proof to me. I'll answer your questions and then ask you some questions, okay? You are committing several fallacies in here. You should study logical fallacies. If you got a doctorate degree in music, maybe they didn't teach that. But we can go through all the logical fallacies if you'd like. However, I'm going to answer your question. Here you go. You said, first of all, do you, Kent Hovind, actually believe that the entire earth was covered by water during Noah's flood to a depth of 15 cubits above the highest mountains? A cubit is elbow to fingertip, so a little over 1.5 feet. So about 22, 24 feet. Okay? Yes, I do believe that. Okay? Now, the Bible warned us about old Codger. Here he is. Knowing this first, there shall come in the last days old codgers walking after their own lust. For this they willingly are ignorant of, that by the word of God the heavens, plural, we covered that 2 nights ago, were of old, and the earth standing out of the water and in the water. It's going to make layers during the flood, and then these layers are going to be folded during the lifting and twisting of the crust. Then they're going to be, as the water sloshes back and forth, the layers are going to be wiped off and redeposited new layers at different angles, called an unconformity in geology. I know you majored in music, but study unconformity. They're all over the world. So yes, Mr. Codger, I believe Noah's flood covered all the earth, 15 cubits above the highest mountains that were there at the time. Now, humanists regard the universe as self-existing and not created. Mr. Codger, you said you were raised like I was in an independent Baptist church and you gave it all up. Did you then accept the evolution theory because of all your music training? Did they teach you came from a rock? The Bible says in Romans, the wrath of God is revealed from heaven against all ungodliness and unrighteousness of men who hold the truth in unrighteousness, which I think includes you. Professing themselves to be wise, they became fools. I think you profess yourself to be wise, if I recall, if you listen to your video. You asked me a question, I answered it. Yes, I believe. You answer mine. Do you believe in the Big Bang? Do you believe you were compressed into a dot smaller than a period on a page? Your second question. Do you believe that all the water arrived over the course of less than a month and a half from both subterranean and meteoric sources? No, old codger. I believe the rain was 40 days and the water kept coming up for 150 days. In the 600th year of Noah's life. Question number 3. You said, and that despite the sustained battering that such a flood would give absolutely everything, somehow representatives of all living and extinct kinds, whatsoever the hell that is, of animals on earth were preserved in a wooden boat that floated on those waters for at least a year. Okay? Mr. Codger, your question assumes that the entire earth was turbulent during the flood. There are hurricanes and tornadoes going on right now someplace in the world. Not around here. Anybody feel a hurricane? I bet they're having some somewhere, or typhoons, or tornadoes, storms. See, it's a big world. It's a really, really big world. Let me explain it to you, okay? It's about 8,000 miles in diameter, 25,000 miles around. It's a big world. You can have a storm over here, and we won't even know about it over here. So the earth is covered in water. Noah's floating in some place where it wasn't turbulent. How's that? Okay? So you're assuming the whole world was turbulent for the whole flood, and that's your problem. You're willingly ignorant of that flood. So, answer. Yes, I believe Noah was fine during that time. Plus, he probably had drogue stones. We covered that on video number 2 of my series. Big, huge rocks hanging over the side of the boat to keep it stable during stormy weather. If you do hit a storm, it can't shake because it's got what they call sea anchors. Big ships use them today. Get stormy, drop an anchor. Even if you can't hit bottom, just the anchor dragging helps, like a shock absorber, to keep it more smooth. Okay, so you asked me number 3. Do you believe that the descendants of those animals on the ark somehow made it back to their continents of origin from somewhere in Turkey starting around 4,400 years ago? And you go on with the question, but I broke it up into 2 parts here. All right, okay, answer. Your question has several faulty assumptions. You assume they had to go back anywhere. If the world before the flood was very different, the animals getting off the boat onto this new world wouldn't know or care where they came from. They're going to find a place where they're comfortable, they got their food supply, got the right climate for them to live in, not a problem, okay? You're assuming that the world was the same after the flood as it was before. See, you are willingly ignorant of the flood, okay? So, your second part of your question. You want to know, do I believe that all animals on Earth today are in fact descendants of those seafaring pairs of kinds? Let's start there, Kent. Okay, Mr. Codger, yes, I believe there were about 8,000 pairs of animals on Noah's Ark, and they produced millions of species alive today.
So to summarize, Kent watched my challenge video as well as a couple that I posted as follow-ups. Given what we've just seen, it's perfectly clear to me that he didn't understand the videos he watched. He has serious comprehension problems. He imagines, I guess, that those questions I asked in the challenge video are the actual unanswerable questions that I intend to pose to him. They aren't. They're easily answerable with a simple yes or no. As I made clear, those questions were preliminary, and a mere yes would have sufficed to answer them all. I wasn't looking for his justification of his batshit beliefs. I just needed to hear him say that he does believe all those absurdities he claims to believe because, again, as I pointed out, I'm fundamentally honest and don't want to accuse people of believing things that they don't in fact believe the way Kent does. The comment that he labeled an ad hominem wasn't that at all. It was a statement of fact about his approach to debate, and I didn't state that fact as an attack against him, but rather as a way of clarifying the terms of the challenge I'd laid for him. I don't know why he couldn't get the sound on my video to work for his whack job session. He obviously listened to it and made inept transcriptions of a few phrases. My videos are in the same audio format as pretty much all the others he's dealt with while whacking in public. You don't suppose that tech failure was opportunistic, do you? Back to his comprehension problem. I made it clear to him why I was recapping my formal education in contrast to his complete lack thereof. I wasn't claiming expertise, a charge that he of course pivoted to immediately. But Kent's either a liar or he's just a blockhead who can't understand anything. I made perfectly clear my reason for summarizing my education, and it wasn't to one-up the country bumpkin or to lay claim to credentials or expertise that I lack, as, again, I made clear to him. My point, and I did make this point, is that after most of a lifetime spent in higher education, both as a student and a teacher, I know what academic rigor looks like and how it works, and I know why it's expected and important. Those expectations are my expectations. He obviously doesn't share my expectations or have any idea what the educational process is about. I have a copy of the dissertation that he submitted for the PhD he bought from a diploma mill, and it's the biggest joke I've ever seen. I say that from the perspective not only of having written an actual dissertation myself, but of having read and evaluated quite a few of them while sitting on various academic committees. That high pitch of expectation was my only point. How could Kent have missed that? But of course that last question was rhetorical. He makes his living by missing every point imaginable and encouraging his vulnerable audience to do the same. It's a tragic situation. Kent imagines, or pretends to imagine, that he's prepping his followers for eternal life with Jesus in the clouds, along with their granny who used to bake those delicious pies and chuck them under their chins and coo to them. He's awash in infantilism, and he promotes it in others. Watch the whole whacking episode on his channel if you're so inclined. It's a howler from start to finish. I'll link you in the description below. Since I've gotten the affirmative replies regarding his beliefs, although getting them was as difficult as extracting a deteriorated cork from a wine bottle, I know that I can proceed with a clear conscience. I'm not misrepresenting Kent Hovind's position. I have established that he really does believe those things. Now it's time for him to defend those beliefs. That's what my actual questions are aimed at, and it's time for the first one. Kent, you're always bitching and moaning about people bringing up more than one topic at a time, so I trust you'll notice, acknowledge, and appreciate the fact that all I'm asking you is a single question. You won't need to focus on anything other than that single question, and I'm in fact going to ask you to stay within its guardrails. We're going to keep it clean, just like you've claimed to want it. The thing is, my question isn't a ludicrous, simple-minded, one-liner gotcha like, do you believe you came from a rock? It's a serious question, and serious questions always require some explanation. I'm going to start with the explanation. You know what koalas are, right? I want to read you a little about them from the Wikipedia article. The koala, or inaccurately koala bear, Phascolarctos cinereus, is an arboreal herbivorous marsupial native to Australia. I'll skip a bit of technical detail that includes mention of their apparently having evolved into several subspecies and go on to the second paragraph. Koalas typically inhabit open eucalyptus woodland, as the leaves of these trees make up most of their diet. Because this eucalypt diet has limited nutritional and caloric content, koalas are largely sedentary and sleep up to 20 hours a day. They are asocial animals, and bonding exists only between mothers and dependent offspring. And skipping a bit about the males, which is irrelevant to my question. Being marsupials, koalas give birth to underdeveloped young that crawl into their mother's pouches, where they stay for the first 6 to 7 months of their lives. These young koalas, known as joeys, are fully weaned around a year old. Skipping a bit more and going on into paragraph 3, koalas were hunted by indigenous Australians and depicted in myths and cave art for millennia. My question to you, Dr. Dino, or would you prefer that I persist in addressing you as boy, it takes the form of questions I often frame for the exams my students take, that of an essay. I will ask you to describe to your own satisfaction, without invoking miracles, how a breeding pair of koalas on Noah's Ark, animals of the sort you've just heard described, managed to populate or repopulate, whichever you prefer, large parts of the island continent Australia, where they have been hunted for thousands of years by Aboriginal Australians, also presumably the offspring of passengers on Noah's Ark, during the 4,400 years since the flood described in the Bible. Since all of these details are important, I'm going to hold you to account for every single one of them. And you will too if you are capable of understanding the nature and intent of the challenge and rising to it, and God forbid, maybe even benefiting from it. The answer to this question will consist of a complete scenario of migration from Turkey to isolated Australia. The distance from Mount Ararat in Turkey to Colombo, Sri Lanka is about 3,300 miles, assuming foot travel along the coasts of Pakistan and India, and includes vast stretches of arid land which in any event would have been wiped completely clean of all vegetation after a year of total submersion in water. You'll also need to get them from the Indian subcontinent to Sri Lanka. Now let's think about the transoceanic distance from Colombo to Darwin, Australia, a reasonable path for migrating koalas to take if you'll bother to look at a globe like the one you condescendingly trotted out for my edification. That's about 3,750 miles. Of course, it does include island hopping in the Indonesian archipelago, so there's that. You may include that in your scenario if you like. In your framing of this altogether realistic scenario, be sure to take the following details into account. Koalas eat mostly eucalyptus. They are sedentary, sleeping up to 20 hours per day. Their young are incapable of caring for themselves for about a year after they're born. Since arriving in Australia, they have evolved into several distinctive subspecies which have been hunted by Aboriginal Australians for thousands of years. You're going to have to explain how they managed to find the one food they can eat on a planet that had been completely denuded of vegetation after a year's flood. Are you picturing the magnitude of this challenge? You're going to have to take into account the fact that they can't possibly travel more than about a mile a day at most, owing to one of the most sedentary lifestyles on Earth. You're going to have to account for the extreme dependence of their young and the constraints that places on the migrating island-hopping mother. You're going to have to get them across vast stretches of parched desert and open water somehow without invoking the miraculous or the downright impossible. Unless you have addressed every one of these details, you have not answered the question or even given it a moment's honest consideration. On the off chance that you decide to take this on, you're welcome to attempt your answer to my one question either in a response video or extemporaneously in front of your adoring audience there at Dinosaur Adventureland, those poor duped souls who apparently get a charge out of watching you whack in public. Whichever format you choose, please do me the courtesy of providing a link to the video you're responding to so that your minions at least have the option of hearing the complete thing from me instead of just your inept synopsis of its contents. For them to rely on your summary of it is like accepting William Barr's summary of the Mueller report at face value. Of course, I doubt you'll take me up on this. You know as well as I do that if you actually took the close look at this one problem that I'm challenging you to take, to look honestly and deeply at something for the first time in your wasted life, you would see that impossible flood legend for exactly what it is. Not the truth of anything whatsoever, but the kind of tall tale that early humans who had never been more than 10 kilometers from where they were born entertained themselves with while scratching their fleas around the campfire. But if you can prove me wrong, please be my guest. Let's see you explain all this coherently, brilliantly, and convincingly. Just this one topic, Kent. That's all. And since I stayed on topic per your request, I trust you will do the same. Thoughts and prayers.